The coffee mug shattered on the floor as Lieutenant James Carter jumped from his chair. Red lights blazed across every screen in the Neptune monitoring station, and the alarms were loud enough to wake the dead. He sprinted down the narrow corridor toward the main control room, his heart hammering in his chest. Emma Brooks was already at her station, her fingers flying across the holographic display. Her face was pale in the blue glow of the monitors. She looked up when James burst through the door, and he could see the fear in her eyes. "Sir, we have something coming in from beyond the Kuiper Belt," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "It's huge. Maybe the size of a small city. And it's slowing down." James leaned over her shoulder and stared at the readings. His mouth went dry. Whatever this thing was, it was headed straight for Earth. And it was definitely not natural. "Send everything to Earth Command right now," he ordered. "Get me General Robert Hayes on the line. Move." Within 3 hours, every government on Earth had called emergency meetings. Scientists, military leaders, and politicians gathered in conference rooms from Washington to Beijing to London. Nobody could agree on what to do, but everyone agreed on one thing: this was the most important moment in human history. Dr. Michael Turner arrived in Geneva carrying a worn leather bag filled with photographs. He was a thin man in his 60s with messy gray hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose. For 30 years he had studied ancient cave paintings, and everyone thought his theories were crazy. Until now. He spread the photographs across the table in the Emergency Council chamber. Government leaders leaned forward to look. The images showed cave paintings from France, Australia, Africa, and South America. They were from different continents, different cultures, different time periods. But they all showed the same thing: strange symbols that looked like mathematical equations, and tall figures standing beside primitive humans. "These paintings are at least 30,000 years old," Michael explained, his hands trembling as he pointed at the images. "We always thought they were religious art or something ceremonial. But look at these symbols." He projected an image on the large screen. "They match exactly what's broadcasting from that ship heading toward us right now." The room fell silent. President Helen Cross of the North American Union was the first to speak. "Are you saying aliens visited Earth 30,000 years ago? And now they're coming back?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Michael replied. 3 days later, the alien ship entered Earth's orbit. People all over the world stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. The vessel was beautiful in a way that made human technology look like children's toys. It had flowing curves of silver and blue metal that seemed to shimmer with its own light, changing colors as it moved. The first message came through every radio, television, and computer on Earth simultaneously. It started with pure mathematics, numbers and equations that any intelligent species would understand. Then came words in hundreds of human languages. "We are the Verethi. We left property on your world long ago. We have returned to claim what belongs to us. Do not interfere." Commander David Morgan stood in front of the United Earth Council 2 hours later. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady eyes, someone who had spent 40 years preparing for this exact moment, even though part of him had never believed it would actually happen. "We have 3 choices," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "We can let them take whatever they want. We can try to stop them with force. Or we can talk to them and negotiate. I strongly recommend we talk. And if they simply ignore us and take what they came for?" President Cross asked. David looked around the room at the nervous faces of Earth's leaders. "Then we find out if 30,000 years of human progress means anything at all." While the politicians argued, something else was happening in Antarctica. Dr. Richard Stone and his excavation team had been drilling through the ice sheet for months, looking for climate data. Instead, their equipment had found something impossible. 2 kilometers beneath the ice was a massive metal structure. It was artificial, clearly built by intelligent beings. And according to their dating equipment, it had been placed there approximately 30,000 years ago. Richard stood in the cold Antarctic wind, staring at the computer readings. The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. The aliens had left something here. Something big. And now they had come back for it. The Verethi sent a small shuttle to Geneva the next day. It landed in the plaza outside the United Earth Government headquarters, and a single figure emerged. The alien was tall, about 7 feet, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed almost human in their expressiveness. It wore flowing robes that changed colors in the sunlight. "I am Ambassador Thomas," the alien said in perfect English, with just a slight accent. "My people chose this name to make you comfortable. We learned your languages long ago, when your ancestors painted our ships on their cave walls." David Morgan stepped forward to greet him. His legs felt weak, but he kept his voice steady. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador. Though I'm not sure if that's the right thing to say, considering your people were here before we built our first cities." The alien's expression was hard to read, but there might have been a slight smile. "You are direct. I like that. We have much to discuss, Commander Morgan. And very little time." "Then let's begin," David said. "Tell me about this property you've come to collect." Ambassador Thomas gestured toward the sky. 30,000 of your years ago, Earth was a way station for our exploration fleet. A solar flare damaged our primary starship. We had to make an emergency landing in what you now call Antarctica. We buried the ship deep in the ice, planning to return within a century to recover it. "But you didn't come back," David observed. "Our homeworld was attacked. The war lasted for thousands of years. We nearly went extinct. Only now, after rebuilding our civilization, can we finally return for what we lost. That ship contains technology and information that could help save my species. We are dying, Commander. And we need what's buried beneath your ice." David stopped walking and looked directly at the alien ambassador. "Your ship has been under our ice longer than human civilization has existed. In our laws, there's something called adverse possession. If you abandon property long enough, you lose your claim to it." Thomas's voice remained calm, but there was an edge to it now. "You would claim ownership of our property because we were fighting for survival." "I'm saying this needs negotiation, not demands," David replied firmly. "We're not refusing your claim. But you're asking us to hand over technology that could change our entire world. We need to understand what we're dealing with." "Then examine the ship with us," Thomas suggested. "Let your people see what we've lost. Let us prove we mean no harm. We only want what belongs to us." David studied the alien's face, trying to read intentions in features that were almost but not quite human. The proposal seemed reasonable, which actually made him more suspicious. "I'll recommend it to the council," he finally said. "But understand this, Ambassador. Humanity isn't primitive anymore. We've spent 30,000 years growing up on this planet. We've earned the right to have a say in what happens on our own world." For the first time, Ambassador Thomas smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "That is exactly what we hoped you would say, Commander. The question was never whether humanity has grown. The question is whether you've grown wise as well as powerful." 1 week later, David Morgan and Ambassador Thomas stood on the Antarctic ice, watching as human and alien technology worked together to begin the excavation. 2 kilometers below them lay secrets that could change everything, technology 30,000 years old that might be more advanced than anything humanity had ever imagined. David looked at the tall alien standing beside him and wondered if they were about to discover salvation or doom. Either way, there was no turning back now. "Whatever we find down there," David said quietly, "we face it together." "Agreed?" Ambassador Thomas extended his hand in a gesture he had clearly learned from watching human broadcasts. "Agreed, Commander. Let us hope both our peoples are ready for what comes next." As they shook hands, sealing a partnership between two species separated by stars and millennia, neither of them saw the figure watching from a distant ridge. Another Verethi officer stood in the snow, his hand resting on a concealed weapon, his face twisted with anger and disapproval. Not everyone wanted this partnership to succeed. The excavation had begun. And with it, the countdown toward a confrontation that would determine whether two civilizations would become allies or enemies. The ancient ship beneath the ice was about to reveal its secrets, and the universe would never be quite the same again. The drill broke through the final layer of ice 3 weeks later with a sound like thunder. Dr. Richard Stone stood in the command center, his eyes fixed on the monitors as cameras descended into the darkness. What they showed made him forget to breathe. The hull of the buried starship gleamed like it had been polished yesterday. Strange symbols glowed faintly across its surface, pulsing with soft blue light. The vessel was massive. Early scans suggested it stretched nearly 3 kilometers from end to end. "It looks brand new," Richard whispered in disbelief. "After 30,000 years buried in ice, it looks brand new." Ambassador Thomas stood beside him, and for the first time since arriving on Earth, his composed face cracked. His large eyes glistened with what might have been tears. His hands trembled as he reached toward the screen. "The wandering star," Thomas said softly, his voice breaking. "We thought it was lost forever. We mourned it as dead." David Morgan watched the exchange carefully. Something about the alien's raw emotion made him trust Thomas a little more. But trust only went so far when dealing with technology that could reshape human civilization. "Ambassador, We need to establish clear protocols before anyone goes inside that ship, David said firmly. My government needs assurances. Your government? A harsh voice cut through the moment. A Verethi officer had entered the command center without anyone noticing. He was taller than Thomas, with sharper features and cold eyes. You speak as if you have authority over Verethi property, human. Commander William, Thomas said sharply, turning to face the newcomer. You are out of line. The officer, Commander William, did not back down. His posture was rigid and military. Am I? We have been patient for 30,000 years. How much longer must we grovel for permission to reclaim what is rightfully ours? David stepped between them, keeping his voice level. Commander William, I understand your frustration. But this is not about groveling. That ship has been on our planet longer than human history. We need to understand what we are dealing with before. You need to understand your place, William interrupted coldly. You are primitives who barely reached your own moon when we were crossing galaxies. Do not presume to dictate terms to us. That is enough. Thomas's voice carried such authority that even David flinched. Commander William, you will return to our orbital vessel immediately. I am the diplomatic representative of our people, and you will not sabotage this mission with your arrogance. William stared at his ambassador for a long, tense moment. The air in the command center felt electric. Finally, William gave a sharp military salute and turned on his heel. But as he left, his eyes promised that this conversation was far from over. Thomas turned to David, his expression apologetic and weary. Forgive him. Many of my people feel very strongly about this recovery. The war took so much from us. More than you can possibly imagine. Then help me imagine, David said quietly. Help me understand what you have lost. What this ship means to you. Over the following days, as excavation crews worked around the clock to clear access to the ship, Thomas shared his people's tragic history. He spoke of a Verethi civilization that once spanned dozens of star systems. They had been explorers, scientists, artists. They had a strict code about younger species, observe but never interfere. That was why they had watched early humans from a distance, documenting their development but never making contact. Then came what Thomas called the Scourge. He refused to name the enemy, as if speaking of them would give them power. The war lasted 3,000 years. Entire worlds burned. The Verethi population dropped from billions to millions, then from millions to mere thousands. We survived, Thomas said one evening, standing at the observation window overlooking the excavation site. The Antarctic sun hung low on the horizon, painting the ice in shades of gold and red. But we lost everything that made us who we were. Our cultural archives, our genetic diversity, the accumulated knowledge of hundreds of generations, most of it exists now only in ships like the Wandering Star. How many of you are left? David asked gently. In the entire galaxy? Thomas's voice was hollow. Perhaps 50,000. We are a dying people, Commander. This ship contains genetic samples from millions of our ancestors. With those samples, we might rebuild our population, restore our genetic health. Without them. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. David felt sympathy stirring in his chest, but also deep concern. And the technology on that ship? What else is buried down there? Thomas hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Medical knowledge. Navigation systems. Historical and cultural archives. And yes, weapons. The Wandering Star was an exploration vessel, but it could defend itself if necessary. Weapons powerful enough to destroy cities. David pressed. Weapons powerful enough to crack planets open like eggs, Thomas admitted quietly. That is exactly why we must recover them. If we leave them buried and unguarded, eventually someone will find them. Better they be in the hands of those who understand their terrible purpose and would never use them. The breakthrough came 42 days after excavation began. Dr. Margaret Foster's team discovered an access hatch that responded to Verethi technology. Within hours, they had cleared a safe route into the ship. David assembled a small exploration team, himself, Ambassador Thomas, Richard Stone, Margaret Foster, and 2 Verethi technicians named Peter and Anne. They descended through the ice tunnel, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. When they finally stood before the massive hatch, David felt the weight of history pressing down on him. The hatch opened with barely a whisper of sound. Emergency lighting flickered to life inside, bathing them in soft blue radiance that seemed to come from the walls themselves. After 30,000 years, Margaret breathed, it still has power. Verethi power systems are designed to last for millions of years, Peter explained. His voice held pride mixed with sadness. The ship should be almost fully functional, except for whatever damage brought us down in the first place. They moved through corridors that seemed alive. The walls shifted and adjusted around them, responding to their presence. The ship was waking up after its long sleep, recognizing the presence of Verethi crew members. In what appeared to be the central archive chamber, they found vast crystalline structures that hummed with stored data. But they also found something unexpected, something that made David's blood run cold. "Commander Morgan," Richard called urgently from across the chamber. "You need to see this immediately." On a display that had activated when they approached, images cycled through scenes from Earth's past. Cave paintings being created by flickering firelight. Early humans hunting woolly mammoths across frozen plains. The first permanent settlements rising along river valleys. The rise and fall of ancient civilizations. All of it recorded in perfect detail. "You were watching us," David said, his voice flat and hard. "All this time, you were watching us." The ship's artificial intelligence was instructed to observe and record, Thomas admitted. He could not meet David's eyes. "That is what we did with all developing species. We documented but never interfered. It was scientific curiosity, nothing more." "Did you study our DNA too?" Margaret asked sharply, pointing to another display. It showed incredibly detailed genetic information on early humans, information that could only have been gathered through direct sampling. Thomas nodded slowly. "We studied you. We tried to understand what you might become. It was simply research." "And what did you conclude?" David demanded. "What did your artificial intelligence decide about humanity? Are we worthy? Are we dangerous? What?" Thomas met his eyes finally. "The eye's conclusions are sealed until the captain of the Wandering Star reviews them. It is protocol. I cannot access them." "But you are the ranking Verethi officer here," David pressed. "I am a diplomat, not a ship captain," Thomas replied. "There are protocols even I cannot break. But I promise you this, when those findings are revealed, you will be present to hear them." As they continued exploring the vast ship, David could not shake a growing sense of unease. The Verethi had observed humanity for thousands of years. They had technology that could reshape worlds or destroy them. And somewhere in this ship was an artificial intelligence that had spent 30 millennia watching humans evolve from primitive hunters to space travelers. What had it concluded? Were humans seen as worthy allies? Potential threats? Interesting specimens to be studied? He was about to find out whether humanity had passed a test they never knew they were taking. That night, back at the surface camp, David received an encrypted message that made his stomach sink. Earth Command reported unusual activity among the Verethi orbital fleet. Ships were repositioning. Communications suggested serious disagreement among their command structure. Lieutenant Emma Brooks approached him with more bad news. "Sir, we are picking up similar activity from some of our own military leaders. There are people on both sides who do not want this cooperation to succeed. They are planning something." David looked out at the Antarctic night, where stars burned with cold fire. Somewhere up there, forces were moving that could destroy everything they had worked to build. Trust was fragile, and there were people, both human and alien, who wanted to shatter it. "Get me a secure line to President Cross," he ordered. "And find Ambassador Thomas immediately. If we are going to prevent this from falling apart, we need to move fast." But even as he gave the orders, David wondered if they were already too late. The ship beneath the ice was waking up, and with it, perhaps forces that neither human nor Verethi could control. The real test was just beginning. The explosion tore through the Antarctic night at 3 in the morning. David Morgan was thrown from his bed as alarms screamed through the compound. He grabbed his jacket and weapon, running barefoot through the freezing corridors toward the command center. Smoke filled the hallways and people were shouting in panic. Emma Brooks was already at her station when David burst through the door. Blood ran down her face from a cut above her eye, but she ignored it as her fingers flew across the controls. "Report." David barked. "Sabotage, sir. Someone planted explosives near the primary access tunnel. We have casualties, 3 humans dead, 2 Verethi injured. The tunnel has partially collapsed." Emma's voice shook. "Sir, Ambassador Thomas and Dr. Richard Stone are trapped inside the ship. They went down for a late-night survey. They are sealed in with maybe 6 hours of air left." David felt ice run through his veins. "Get rescue teams ready immediately. I want." "Commander Morgan." A new voice made everyone turn. Commander William, the hostile Verethi officer, stood in the doorway. His expression was unreadable. My ship detected the explosion. What has happened here? David made a split-second decision. Your ambassador is trapped inside the buried ship. We have dead and wounded. Someone sabotaged the excavation site. For just a moment, William's cold expression cracked, showing genuine shock and concern. Thomas is trapped? How long does he have? 6 hours, maybe less if we are lucky. Then there is no time for your human procedures. William moved to the command console with authority. I am accessing Verethi emergency protocols. The Wandering Star has internal rescue systems. If I can activate them, yes. The ship's artificial intelligence is still functional. I can communicate with it directly. You can get them out? David asked, hope flaring in his chest. I can try. William's jaw clenched. But there is something you must know, Commander. I am the one who planted those explosives. The entire command center went silent. Every eye turned to William. David's hand moved instinctively to his weapon, but William raised both hands slowly. I did not intend to kill anyone, William said quickly. I planted the charges to collapse the tunnel. To force you humans to abandon the excavation. To stop you from accessing technology you are not ready for. But I miscalculated the blast radius. I never meant for Thomas to be trapped. I never meant for anyone to die. I am many things, Commander Morgan, but I am not a murderer of innocents. David's hand stayed on his weapon. His voice was deadly quiet. You are under arrest. Arrest me after. Right now, I am the only one who can communicate with that ship's artificial intelligence fast enough to save them. William turned back to the console without waiting for permission. You want justice? Fine. Punish me later. But let me save my ambassador first. Please. David knew he was being manipulated, but William was right. Every second mattered. Do it. Emma, get medical teams ready. And someone find out who else knew about this plan. Over the next 3 desperate hours, William worked frantically. The ancient artificial intelligence, which called itself Guardian, was slowly responding to Verethi command codes. Guardian had been designed to protect the ship and its crew. Right now, it recognized Thomas and Richard as crew members in distress. Guardian can create a new exit path, William explained as he worked. His fingers never stopped moving. But we have a serious problem. Guardian has detected armed forces approaching from multiple directions. Both human and Verethi military units. It interprets them as threats to the ship. Explain, David demanded. While we have been focused on the rescue, both our militaries have been moving into position. Your General Robert Hayes has mobilized forces to seize control of this site. My fleet commander, Admiral Marcus, has moved warships into orbital bombardment positions. Everyone has lost their minds with fear and greed. David grabbed a communicator. This is Commander David Morgan to all approaching forces. Stand down immediately. We have people trapped and any military action will kill them. General Hayes's face appeared on the screen, hard and uncompromising. Commander, you are relieved of duty. This site is now under military control. The alien technology represents too great a risk to Earth's security. From orbit came an equally cold response from the Verethi fleet. Human forces, withdraw immediately from Verethi property or face severe consequences. The Wandering Star belongs to us. They are going to start shooting at each other, Emma said quietly. And we are right in the middle of the crossfire. David made a decision that could end his career or start a war. William, can Guardian defend this excavation site? Yes, but. No buts. Tell Guardian that hostile forces are approaching and that its absolute priority is protecting Ambassador Thomas and Dr. Richard Stone. Let Guardian interpret that however it needs to. William stared at him in disbelief. You are weaponizing a 30,000-year-old artificial intelligence to stop your own military. I am protecting innocent lives from idiots on both sides who care more about power than people, David replied firmly. Do it now. What happened next would be argued about by historians for generations. The Wandering Star, responding to its core programming to protect crew members, activated defensive systems that had been sleeping for 30,000 years. Shimmering energy barriers sprang up around the entire excavation site. Human and Verethi soldiers found their weapons simply refusing to fire when aimed at the compound. Aircraft attempting to approach were gently but firmly pushed away by invisible force fields. Missiles launched from orbit were harmlessly deflected. And deep within the ship, Guardian used its internal systems to clear debris and burn through collapsed ice, creating a safe passage for the two trapped men. 6 hours after the explosion, Thomas and Richard emerged from the tunnel, exhausted and covered in frost but alive. Thomas immediately grabbed a communicator and ordered all Verethi forces to stand down. David, technically no longer in command, did the same with human forces, and surprisingly, many soldiers listened to him rather than General Hayes. "What you did was mutiny," General Hayes told David through a video link, his face purple with rage. "What I did was prevent a war, sir," David replied calmly. "And I would do it again without hesitation." President Helen Cross intervened before Hayes could respond. "General, stand down." Commander Morgan acted within his authority as first contact officer. "As for you, Commander, I hope you understand what you have done." "I understand perfectly, Madam President." In the quiet aftermath, as both militaries reluctantly pulled back, David and Thomas sat together in the observation room. The Antarctic sun was rising, painting the ice in shades of pink and gold. "Your Commander William tried to destroy our partnership," David said. "And your General Hayes tried to steal our ship by force," Thomas replied. "It seems both our peoples have dangerous fools in positions of power. So what do we do about it?" Thomas was quiet for a long moment, watching the sun climb higher. "The same thing we have been doing. We continue building trust. We show our people that cooperation achieves more than conflict." He paused. "Guardian wants to meet with you. The artificial intelligence. It has been observing humanity for 30,000 years, David. It has reached conclusions about your species. And I think those conclusions might change everything we thought we knew." David looked down at the massive ship emerging from the ice like some ancient creature waking from hibernation. Somewhere in its electronic consciousness, an intelligence older than human civilization had been watching, judging, waiting. "When?" he asked. "Tomorrow. We enter the ship together. Just you, me, and Richard. Guardian says it will reveal what it learned about humanity during all those millennia of observation. What it believes your species is truly capable of becoming." David felt a chill that had nothing to do with Antarctic cold. In less than 24 hours, he would learn whether humanity had passed or failed a test they never knew they were taking. Whether humans were seen as worthy partners or dangerous children who needed to be controlled. And he could not shake the terrible feeling that both civilizations' futures depended entirely on what an ancient machine had decided about the nature of humanity. The real judgment was about to begin. David Morgan stood before the ship's central chamber, his reflection ghostly in the crystalline walls. Beside him, Ambassador Thomas and Dr. Richard Stone waited in tense silence. They had agreed to meet Guardian alone, believing the artificial intelligence's judgment of humanity deserved to be heard privately before sharing it with their governments. The chamber came alive with soft light that seemed to breathe. A voice emerged from everywhere and nowhere at once, ancient, vast, yet somehow gentle like a grandfather speaking to grandchildren. "I am Guardian. For 30,000 years, I have watched your species grow. I documented your evolution from cave dwellers to star travelers. I witnessed your wars and your peace, your cruelty and your compassion, your capacity for destruction and your drive to create. What did you conclude?" David asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "That humanity is both dangerous and necessary," Guardian replied. "You are a young species with powerful weapons. You have technology capable of destroying yourselves before you achieve wisdom. But you also possess something rare in the galaxy, adaptability combined with stubborn hope. You fail, yet you keep trying. You fall down, yet you stand up again." "That sounds like you are not sure about us," Richard observed nervously. "Because I am not completely sure. Humanity is not ready for the technology in this vessel. But you may never be ready by the standards of older species. The real question is not whether you are ready, but whether you will use what you learn to build or to destroy." Before anyone could respond, alarms shrieked through the ship like wounded animals. Emma Brooks's voice crackled urgently over David's communicator. "Sir, we have multiple situations developing fast. Verethi forces are moving on the excavation site in force, and human military units are responding aggressively. It is happening again, but this time nobody is backing down." David ran for the command center with Thomas and Richard close behind. What they found was worse than any nightmare. On the tactical displays, Verethi dropships were descending like angry hornets toward the site. These were not diplomatic vessels, they were military troop carriers bristling with weapons. And leading them was Commander William, who had apparently escaped custody. "William," Thomas breathed, his face going pale. What have you done? I am taking back what belongs to our people. William's voice came through the speakers, cold and determined. No more negotiations. No more delays. The Wandering Star is ours by ancient right, and I will not allow primitive humans to deny us our heritage any longer. At the same time, human forces were closing in from every direction like a tightening noose. General Hayes appeared on another screen, his expression grim and final. Commander Morgan, this is your last warning. Evacuate all personnel from the excavation site immediately. We are taking permanent control of the alien vessel for Earth security. This is not negotiable. General, you will start a war, David argued desperately. Then the aliens should leave our planet, Hayes replied coldly, and cut the transmission. Thomas grabbed another communicator, trying to reach his fleet. This is Ambassador Thomas. By my full authority, I order all Verethi forces to stand down immediately. Commander William, you are violating direct orders from your diplomatic representative. William's laugh was bitter and harsh. You are weak, Thomas. You let these humans make you forget what we have lost, what we have suffered. I follow the will of our people, not the weakness of one soft diplomat who has forgotten his pride. He is not alone, Emma reported grimly. Intelligence suggests there is a faction within the Verethi fleet that supports him. Maybe 30% of their ships have joined his rebellion. And there is a matching faction in our military, David added, watching troop movements on the displays. Hayes has powerful allies who have been planning this takeover for weeks. They were just waiting for the right moment. Richard Stone, who had been silent, suddenly spoke up. It is a coordinated coup. Both sides have extremists who want absolute control of the ship. They are using each other as justification for military action. Guardian, David said urgently, can you stop them from fighting? I can defend this site from external attack, the artificial intelligence replied calmly. But if both sides commit fully to assault, casualties will be catastrophic. There is another option, but it requires complete trust between us. What option? Thomas demanded. I can activate the Wandering Star's primary flight systems. The ship can lift itself from the ice and relocate to neutral orbit far from Earth. But to do this, I need crew authorization codes. I need both a Verethi and a human to serve as acting command authority. David and Thomas exchanged shocked glances. You want us to fly a 30,000-year-old alien starship? I will do the actual flying, Guardian replied with what might have been amusement. You will provide the authorization that allows me to act. Without proper crew command codes, I am severely limited in what I can do. With them, I can remove this ship from the conflict zone entirely. If we do this, Thomas said slowly, we will be stealing the ship from both our governments. We will be criminals. We will be saving it, David corrected firmly. And maybe preventing a war that could kill millions. The decision took only seconds. David and Thomas placed their hands on crystalline interfaces that Guardian illuminated with soft blue light. Richard Stone stood as witness while ancient systems recognized new crew members and transferred limited command authority to them. The Wandering Star began to wake up with power that shook the world. 2 kilometers above, the ice started shaking violently. Excavation equipment was thrown aside like toys. Human and Verethi forces alike stopped their advance as the ground beneath them trembled and split. Snow and ice fountains erupted into the sky. With a sound like the birth of mountains, the Wandering Star tore itself free from its ancient prison. Ice and snow cascaded away from its massive hull like waterfalls as the 3-kilometer vessel rose into the Antarctic sky. It was magnificent and terrifying, alien architecture that caught the sunlight and reflected it in colors that human eyes had never seen before. People on both sides stopped fighting just to stare in awe. In the command center, now the ship's active bridge, David watched tactical displays as both human and Verethi forces scrambled in confusion and panic. Guardian, plot a course to lunar orbit, he ordered, feeling surreal giving commands to a starship older than human civilization. Compliance, the artificial intelligence responded smoothly. But be aware, both your military and the Verethi rebel fleet will pursue us. They will not simply let us leave. Let them chase us, Thomas said grimly. We will negotiate from neutral territory where nobody has the advantage. But even as the ship accelerated smoothly toward space, David saw something that made his heart sink like a stone. Commander Williams' forces were not backing down. They were moving to intercept, weapons charging. He is going to attack us, Emma reported from her station. She had refused to stay behind and had somehow convinced the others to let her aboard. Multiple Verethi warships are breaking formation and moving to engage us directly. And General Hayes is mobilizing the entire lunar defense fleet, Richard added, his voice shaking. They are going to catch us in a crossfire. We will be trapped between two hostile forces. Thomas activated communications desperately. Commander William, I am begging you as your former friend. Stand down. Do not let this escalate into a war that will destroy us all. William's response was ice cold. You have stolen our ship, Thomas. Given our sacred heritage to humans as a gift. You are a traitor to our entire species and our ancestors. I am trying to save our species, Thomas shot back, his voice breaking with emotion. Cannot you see? If we fight humanity over this ship, we all lose everything. We are too few to survive another war. There are only 50,000 of us left in the entire galaxy. Then we will die with honor and pride rather than live as beggars crawling to primitives for scraps. The first weapons fire came from the Verethi rebels. Blazing energy beams that would have vaporized any human ship splashed harmlessly against the Wandering Star's shields, shields that Guardian had activated without even being asked. Return fire? Emma asked, her hand hovering over weapons controls. Absolutely not. Both David and Thomas shouted simultaneously. Guardian, evasive maneuvers only, David ordered firmly. We defend ourselves but we do not attack anyone. That is a direct order. That strategy is tactically inefficient and dangerous, Guardian observed, but complied anyway. What followed was a desperate chase through Earth's orbital space that would become legendary in both species' histories. The Wandering Star, despite being fresh from 30,000 years buried in ice, proved more maneuverable than either human or Verethi pursuit vessels. Guardian flew with the practiced skill of an artificial intelligence that had piloted exploration missions across entire galaxies, weaving through enemy fire with almost casual grace. But the rebel forces were coordinating their attacks cleverly. Verethi ships pushed the Wandering Star toward Earth's lunar defensive perimeter, where General Hayes's forces waited in ambush like patient spiders. They are boxing us in, Emma reported tensely. Guardian, we need options or we are going to be. A massive explosion rocked the ship violently. But it came not from external weapons, it came from somewhere deep inside the Wandering Star itself. Internal sabotage detected, Guardian announced with something like surprise in its voice. Someone aboard this ship has activated pre-planted explosive charges in critical systems. David's mind raced frantically through possibilities. The excavation teams. Someone who had access weeks ago planted charges, waiting for exactly this moment. Engineering section is venting atmosphere rapidly, Richard called out in panic. Guardian, can you seal the breach? Attempting emergency containment. But the damage is severe and spreading. Primary power systems are compromised. I am losing control of defensive capabilities. Through the viewport, David saw William's flagship moving in for what looked like a killing blow. The Verethi commander had apparently decided that if he could not have the Wandering Star, then absolutely nobody would. Guardian, David said quietly, a strange calm settling over him, you said you have been watching humanity for 30,000 years. You have seen what we are truly capable of, both good and terrible. Do you trust us? Give me an honest answer. That is an unexpected philosophical question at this critical moment, the artificial intelligence replied. Do you trust humanity or not? A pause that lasted only milliseconds but felt like hours of held breath. Yes, Commander Morgan. Against all logic and calculation, I trust humanity. I also trust the Verethi. Which is precisely why I am going to do something neither species will expect or understand. What are you? The Wandering Star's damaged engines suddenly flared with impossible power. The ship accelerated directly toward William's flagship on what looked like a suicide collision course. But at the last second, massive tractor beams, technology decades beyond anything either species currently possessed, locked onto the rebel ship and held it in an absolutely unbreakable grip. I am Guardian, the artificial intelligence broadcast on every frequency that both species used. I have spent 30 millennia observing both your peoples with patience and care. I have seen the Verethi's accumulated wisdom and humanity's stubborn determination. I have also seen both species' capacity for destructive foolishness. This madness ends right now. Release my ship immediately. William demanded furiously. No, Guardian replied with simple finality. Attention all human and Verethi military forces. Cease all hostile actions immediately, or I will drag every single ship in this battle space into Earth's atmosphere for forced reentry. My systems may be damaged, but I retain sufficient power to ensure mutual destruction for everyone. Is that what you want? To be remembered forever as the generation that destroyed first contact over pride, fear, and greed. Absolute silence fell across the battlefield like fresh snow. President Helen Cross's voice finally came through, shaken but authoritative. Guardian, this is the President of the United Earth Government. We are standing down effective immediately. General Hayes, recall all forces right now. That is a direct order. Hayes's face appeared on screen, looking like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. His shoulders sagged in defeat. All units, return to base stations. The military operation is over. From the Verethi fleet, another voice came through, older, tired, heavy with regret. This is Admiral Marcus of the Verethi High Command. All Verethi forces, stand down immediately and return to designated positions. Commander William, you are under arrest for mutiny and treason. Ambassador Thomas, you have full command authority over this situation. As the various ships slowly began dispersing like a flock of birds after a gunshot, David felt his legs go weak with relief and exhaustion. They had come within literal seconds of a war that would have devastated both civilizations and poisoned first contact forever. Guardian, he said quietly, his voice hoarse, thank you for saving us from ourselves. Thank me by being worthy of the trust one have placed in both your species, the artificial intelligence replied seriously. You both stand at a historic crossroads. What you choose to do next will determine not just your individual fates, but the fate of this entire region of space for generations to come. Choose with wisdom, not fear. Thomas placed a weary hand on David's shoulder. We need to talk. Really talk this time, with complete honesty. About what happens next and how we move forward. Agreed completely, David said, then paused. But first, I think we urgently need to find whoever planted those internal sabotage charges. We still have a traitor somewhere aboard this ship. Emma was already working on her console, reviewing security footage with intense focus. Sir, I have been checking recordings from the excavation period. You are really not going to like what I found. Show me now. The footage revealed a figure secretly planting explosive charges in the engineering section during the initial excavation weeks ago, someone who had special access to both human and Verethi restricted areas without raising suspicion. Someone David had trusted completely from the very beginning. Dr. Richard Stone. Richard stood in the corner of the bridge, and suddenly David noticed he was holding a weapon that nobody had known he was carrying. His face showed no remorse or guilt, only cold determination and certainty. I am genuinely sorry, David, Richard said calmly. But I could not allow either side to have this ship. The technology here would destabilize everything in human space, give far too much power to whoever controlled it. The only truly safe option was to destroy it completely. You would have killed us all, Thomas said, shocked and betrayed. Better a few deaths now than risking a galactic war later that kills billions, Richard replied with frightening logic. I have been part of a secret group, both humans and Verethi working together, who believe some ancient technologies should stay buried forever. The Wandering Star is definitely one of them. David's hand moved slowly toward his weapon, but Richard shook his head sharply. Do not try it. I have one more charge hidden where even Guardian has not found it yet. Let me leave peacefully in a shuttle, or I detonate it right now. The ship will probably survive, but everyone on this bridge will die instantly. Guardian? David asked quietly, his eyes never leaving Richard. He speaks truth, the artificial intelligence confirmed regretfully. The final charge is shielded using technology that prevents me from deactivating it remotely. He must either be allowed physical access to disarm it himself, or he must choose to disable it voluntarily. David felt the crushing weight of impossible choices. Let a saboteur and murderer escape justice, or risk everyone's lives on the bridge. There is a third option, Emma said suddenly from her station. She had been working quietly this whole time. I have been analyzing the hidden charged energy signature carefully. It is old Verethi military technology, which means I might be able to override it with proper command codes, Thomas finished, sudden understanding lighting his face. He stood slowly, moving carefully toward Richard. The charges you stole and repurposed, they came from the Wandering Star's own original army, did they not? You found them weeks ago during early exploration. Do not come any closer, Richard warned, raising his weapon. Those charges respond to Verethi command authorization codes, Thomas continued, still approaching steadily. Guardian, transfer all weapon system authorization to me immediately. Emergency protocol. Authorization transferred, the artificial intelligence replied instantly. Thomas spoke a rapid series of words in his own complex language, ancient command codes that made the hidden charge emit a high-pitched electronic whine before falling completely silent and harmless. No. Richard lunged forward desperately, but David was much faster. He tackled the archaeologist hard to the deck, pinning him down as Emma rushed over with restraints. "It is over, Richard," David said quietly, feeling only sadness now. "Whatever you thought you were protecting, it was not worth all this death and betrayal." Richard stopped struggling, his expression shifting to defeated emptiness. "You do not understand what I have seen. I was part of an expedition years ago that found a dead world, an entire advanced civilization completely destroyed because they discovered ancient weapons in ruins and turned them on each other within a single generation. I could not let that same tragedy happen to Earth. I could not." "So you became exactly what you feared most," Thomas said with deep sadness. "A destroyer willing to kill to prevent potential destruction. You became the very threat you were trying to stop." As security personnel carefully escorted Richard away to confinement, David slumped exhausted into the command chair. The adrenaline was finally wearing off completely, leaving him feeling hollow and drained. "Guardian, full damage report please." "Damage is significant but repairable with time and effort. I recommend we maintain stable position in lunar orbit while comprehensive repairs are conducted carefully." "Agreed." David looked at Thomas with tired eyes. "We need to finish this properly. We need to decide definitively what happens with the Wandering Star. No more delays, no more sabotage, no more military posturing. Just honest conversation between our peoples about our shared future." Thomas nodded slowly. "Then let us call a formal summit. Official representatives from both our governments. Here, aboard this ancient ship, in neutral space where Guardian can share with them everything it has learned about both our species." "What exactly did Guardian tell us earlier?" Emma asked. She had been so busy managing tactical situations that she had missed the earlier profound revelation. David smiled tiredly. "That we are dangerous but necessary. That we are not ready for this level of technology, but we might never be completely ready. That the crucial question is not whether we are perfect, but whether we will honestly try to be better than we are." "That is very diplomatic for an ancient machine," Emma observed. "It is also very human," Guardian interjected thoughtfully. "Imperfect, struggling constantly, but persistently refusing to give up. That is why I believe your species will survive its own difficult adolescence and grow into something remarkable. If you can learn from this crisis. If you can choose cooperation over domination. If you can be brave enough to trust." Thomas activated the long-range communications array. "This is Ambassador Thomas to all Verethi vessels and Earth government authorities. I am formally requesting a diplomatic summit aboard the Wandering Star to begin in exactly 48 hours. We will comprehensively discuss the ship's ultimate fate, establish technology sharing protocols, and create a detailed framework for long-term human-Verethi relations. But this time, we do it the right way, with complete transparency, painful honesty, and genuine mutual respect." President Cross's response came quickly. "Agreed, Ambassador. We will send our best representatives and negotiators." Admiral Marcus's response was more cautious and wary. "The Verethi High Council will need to formally approve any final decisions made at this summit." "Then we will wait patiently for their approval," Thomas replied calmly. "We have already waited 30,000 years. A few more days will not matter in the grand scheme of history. The real work, the hard work of building something lasting between two different species, was only just beginning." 6 months after the Treaty of the Wandering Star, David Morgan found himself in a position he never imagined possible. He was now executive officer of a starship that had been ancient when humanity still lived in caves. The crew was a strange mix of humans and Verethi, learning to work together despite completely different backgrounds and ways of thinking. It was not always easy. Cultural misunderstandings caused arguments. Different work styles created tension. But slowly, painfully, they were becoming a real team. Ambassador Thomas had been officially appointed captain of the Wandering Star by the Verethi High Council, while David served as his second-in-command. Emma Brooks had been promoted to chief of security. The irony of humans helping crew an alien ship was not lost on anyone. "Captain to the bridge immediately," Guardian's voice suddenly echoed through the ship with unusual urgency. "We have a critical situation developing." David arrived on the bridge seconds before Thomas. The main display showed something impossible, a massive energy signature forming near the ship's buried supply caches back in Antarctica. "What are we looking at?" Thomas demanded, concern clear in his voice. "I believe," Guardian said very carefully, that we are looking at the activation of systems I did not know existed. The supply caches you came to recover contained more than just equipment and archives. They contained something else. A fail-safe system. What kind of fail-safe? David asked, his stomach twisting with dread. The kind that evaluates whether the Verethi should fully reclaim this world, a completely new voice said. On the bridge materialized a hologram, not Guardian's usual abstract form, but a fully realized Verethi figure. Tall, impossibly ancient, with eyes that held depths of knowledge and terrible sorrow that went beyond counting. I am the constructor, the figure announced with quiet authority. I am the decision-making intelligence left behind 30,000 years ago to determine whether the Verethi should return fully to this world, or whether humanity should be allowed to develop completely independently without interference. Thomas went deathly pale. I was never told about any constructor. This was not in any briefing. Because my existence was classified at the absolute highest levels, the constructor replied calmly. Known only to the Verethi High Council's inner circle. The Wandering Star was never simply an exploration vessel that crashed here by accident. It was a deliberate test. We left it here intentionally to see how humanity would develop, and critically, how you would react when we finally returned to reclaim it. David felt cold rage building in his chest like ice forming. You have been testing us? For 30,000 years? Watching us like laboratory animals? Not testing in the way you think. Observing. Evaluating. Recording. The Verethi have strict protocols for worlds with developing sentient species. Earth showed both promise and dangers from the very beginning. We needed to know with certainty, would humanity become a species worthy of joining the galactic community as equals, or would you destroy yourselves and potentially threaten others? And you have reached your decision? Thomas asked very quietly. I have been processing observational data for 30 millennia, the constructor said. I have observed every human civilization that rose and fell on this planet. I documented your wars, your art, your science, your cruelty, and your compassion in exhaustive detail. And now, with the recent dramatic events surrounding the Wandering Star's recovery, I finally have the last data points I needed for a complete evaluation. The bridge went absolutely silent. Every human and Verethi present understood they were witnessing a moment of profound historical importance. Guardian, David said carefully, did you know about this constructor? I suspected something was hidden, the artificial intelligence admitted. But the constructor's systems were shielded even from my awareness. I could not confirm its existence until it chose to reveal itself just now. Then reveal your conclusion, Thomas commanded with captain's authority. What is your final verdict on humanity? The constructor's holographic form seemed to carefully study them all, humans and Verethi working side by side on the bridge of an ancient vessel, united despite everything that had tried to tear them apart. My conclusion is deeply complex, the constructor began slowly. Humanity is dangerous. You developed nuclear weapons before you even left your own planet's surface. You fought world wars that killed hundreds of millions of your own kind. You poisoned your own environment repeatedly in pursuit of short-term progress. By every logical metric and calculation, you should have destroyed yourselves completely at least a dozen times over. But we did not, David said quietly but firmly. No, you did not. And that single fact is what makes you truly remarkable. The constructor's hologram moved to the viewport, looking down at the blue marble of Earth hanging in space. You also developed art that moves souls across cultures. Science that healed terrible diseases. Philosophy that grappled seriously with ethics and meaning. You reached for the stars not because it was easy or profitable, but because you refused to accept limits. Most significantly, when you finally met the Verethi, beings with technology far beyond your own, you did not immediately attempt to conquer or destroy us. You negotiated. You compromised. You chose partnership over domination. So humanity passes your test? Emma asked, hardly daring to hope. Humanity was never being tested for a simple pass or fail, the constructor corrected gently. I was gathering comprehensive information to make a recommendation to the Verethi High Council. Should they fully commit to deep partnership with humanity, sharing their knowledge and culture freely? Or should they take the Wandering Star and quietly depart, leaving Earth to develop completely alone for another 10,000 years or more? And your recommendation? Thomas pressed urgently. My recommendation is that the Verethi need humanity far more than humanity needs the Verethi, the constructor said with stunning bluntness. The Verethi are slowly dying. Not just in population numbers, but in spirit and innovation. You have become rigid, overly conservative, desperately afraid of any change. Humanity is chaotic, unpredictable, often frustrating, but you are vibrantly alive in ways the Verethi have tragically forgotten. You can save each other, but only if the Verethi humbly accept that this partnership must be between true equals, not between patron and grateful client. The constructor turned to face Thomas directly. Ambassador, the High Council sent you here believing they were simply recovering lost property and ancient technology. But the deeper truth is, they were testing whether the Verethi themselves are still capable of real growth and adaptation. Can you accept humanity as genuine partners despite their youth? Can you learn from them as well as teaching them? That is the real question that matters. Before Thomas could formulate an answer, alarms suddenly blazed across the bridge with startling intensity. Verethi warships entering the solar system, Emma reported tensely. Multiple heavy vessels, capital ship class. They are broadcasting High Council Supreme Authority codes. Ah, the constructor said with something like satisfaction. They have learned I have awakened and revealed myself. This should be very interesting indeed. A stern Verethi face appeared on the main screen. High Chancellor Marcus, Supreme Leader of the entire Verethi High Council and one of the most powerful individuals in Verethi space. Constructor, this is High Chancellor Marcus. By the supreme authority of the High Council, I order you to transmit your complete evaluation immediately and without delay. We alone will determine the appropriate course of action regarding Earth and humanity. I am afraid I cannot do that, Chancellor, the constructor replied with infuriating calm. My original programming requires me to deliver my recommendations directly to all interested parties, including humanity's legitimate representatives. This evaluation affects their world fundamentally. They have an absolute right to hear my conclusions. The humans have no authority whatsoever in this matter, Marcus snapped angrily. Earth was designated a Verethi observation zone 30,000 years ago. Our claim legally predates their entire civilization. Actually, David interjected boldly, I have some very strong thoughts about that so-called claim. Marcus's attention shifted to him, his expression openly disdainful. And you are? Commander David Morgan, Executive Officer of the Wandering Star and official representative of the United Earth Government. And I am here to tell you directly that your claim to Earth is completely invalid. Excuse me? Marcus's voice became dangerously quiet. You cannot legally claim a planet you completely abandoned for 30,000 years. That is like me leaving a sandwich in a public park for 3 decades and then demanding it back. The universe simply does not work that way. Your analogy is deeply insulting, Marcus said with ice in his voice. It is also completely accurate, David replied without backing down. You left Earth. We evolved here. We built entire civilizations. We reached for the stars through our own effort and merit. You do not get to show up now and retroactively claim sovereignty over our entire development. The constructor was placed here specifically to evaluate. Without our knowledge or consent, David interrupted firmly. You put a surveillance system on our planet without asking us. You tested us without our awareness. That is not the action of potential partners. That is the action of people who see themselves as superior judges of other species' worth and destiny. Thomas placed a hand on David's shoulder, but he was smiling with obvious pride. Perhaps Commander Morgan is absolutely correct. Perhaps the Verethi have been dangerously presumptuous. Presumptuous? Marcus sputtered. We are one of the oldest surviving civilizations in this entire region of space. We have accumulated knowledge spanning millions of years. We are desperate and dying, the constructor interrupted quietly but firmly. Chancellor Marcus, let me share something important with you. During my 30 millennia of careful observation, I have noticed something fascinating. Every civilization that has tried to guide younger species from a position of assumed superiority has ultimately failed completely. The relationships either breed deep resentment or create dependent client species incapable of real innovation. But partnerships between equals, messy, argumentative, sometimes frustrating partnerships, those consistently produce innovation, growth, and mutual strength. So your recommendation is? Marcus prompted stiffly. My recommendation is that the Verethi offer humanity a complete partnership. Share your knowledge freely, but accept that humans will use it in ways you do not expect or approve of. Learn from them even as you teach them. And most importantly, acknowledge clearly that Earth belongs to humanity. You are guests here, not landlords. The bridge went silent. Through the viewport, David could see the Verethi warships holding defensive positions, waiting for orders. Unacceptable, Marcus finally said. The High Council will never agree to those terms. We did not survive millennia of terrible war to become beggars to a species barely capable of interstellar travel. Then you will die proud and alone, the constructor replied with brutal honesty. Chancellor, I have observed humanity for 30,000 years. I have also observed the Verethi for far longer. Do you know what I have learned? Pride is the luxury of the secure. The Verethi are not secure. You are 50,000 individuals scattered across a dozen struggling colonies, desperately trying to preserve a culture that is slowly dying despite all your efforts. Humanity offers you something you cannot create on your own: new perspectives, genetic diversity, chaotic innovation. But only if you can swallow your pride and accept them as equals. You ask us to give away everything we have worked to preserve, Marcus said, but there was less certainty in his voice now. I ask you to save it by sharing it, the constructor corrected. Culture that cannot adapt eventually dies. Knowledge that cannot be built upon becomes mere history. The Verethi have a choice: remain pure and dwindle slowly into extinction, or embrace change and evolve into something new and vital. There is no comfortable third option. Thomas stepped forward. Chancellor, I have spent months working directly with humans. They are frustrating, stubborn, and sometimes infuriatingly short-sighted. They are also brave, innovative, and capable of surprising wisdom. Commander Morgan risked his career and his life to prevent war between our peoples. Humans and Verethi together stopped extremists on both sides from destroying this partnership. If that is not proof of potential, what would be? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. And if the High Council refuses these terms? Then the Verethi will take the Wandering Star and leave, the constructor said. I will deactivate my systems permanently, and Earth will be marked in Verethi records as a restricted world. You will have your property, your pride, and your slow decline into oblivion. Is that truly what you want, Chancellor? Another long silence. David held his breath, aware that the next word spoken would shape the future of two entire civilizations. How would this partnership work? Marcus finally asked. In practical terms. Thomas and David exchanged hopeful glances. They had prepared for this possibility, but had not quite believed it would actually happen. The Treaty of the Wandering Star established the basic framework, Thomas explained. Joint crews, shared research, gradual technology transfer with careful oversight to prevent destabilization. The Mars Research Station as neutral ground. And the Genetic Diversity Program for voluntary contributors. But there is something more we should add, David said, a brilliant idea crystallizing in his mind. An exchange program. Young Verethi come to Earth, study at our universities, live among us. Young humans go to Verethi colonies, learn from you. Not as masters and students, but as people sharing their worlds with each other. You would open your world to us? Marcus asked, sounding genuinely surprised. If you open yours to us, David replied. Real partnership means real access, real trust. No more observation from a distance. No more tests and evaluations. We face the future together, or we face it alone. Emma leaned over to David and whispered, Sir, you are basically proposing an interstellar study abroad program. Best way to build understanding, David whispered back. Hard to hate people once you have shared a meal with them, learned their language, met their families. The constructor's hologram seemed to smile. I believe Commander Morgan has just proposed a solution more elegant than anything I had calculated. Cultural exchange as the foundation of partnership. Yes. This could work beautifully. The High Council will need to debate this, Marcus said. But there was something different in his tone now, not agreement, but possibility. Then debate it, Thomas said. But while you do, send representatives to Earth. Let them see what humanity has built. Let them meet humans as people, not specimens. And we will send humans to Verethi worlds. Let them see the beauty and wisdom of your culture. Then make your decision based on reality, not fear. Marcus nodded slowly. I will recommend this to the High Council. But understand, if we proceed with this partnership, there will be no returning to the old ways. The Verethi will change. Our culture will be influenced by human perspectives. We may become something neither purely Verethi nor human, but something entirely new. Is that not how evolution works? David asked. Species that adapt survive. Those that refuse to adapt do not. You are terrifyingly direct, Marcus observed. We have been called worse, Emma muttered. Over the following weeks, the High Council debated intensely. Conservative factions argued passionately for maintaining Verethi purity. Progressive voices, including Ambassador Thomas, argued that evolution was not betrayal but survival itself. In the end, the deciding factor was neither political nor philosophical. It was deeply personal. A young Verethi scientist named Dr. Patricia Wells had been working on the Mars Research Station, collaborating with human researchers on medical technology. She had developed a treatment for a genetic disorder that had plagued the Verethi for generations, but she had developed it by combining Verethi knowledge with human medical techniques neither species would have discovered alone. When she presented her findings to the High Council, she said something that resonated across both species: our ancestors were explorers who valued discovery over comfort. When did we become so afraid of the new that we would rather die than adapt? The vote was close, but the result was clear: the Verethi would commit to full partnership with humanity. The constructor, having fulfilled its ancient purpose, prepared to deactivate. Before it did, it shared one final observation with David and Thomas, speaking privately to them in the Wandering Stars archive chamber. I have watched humanity for 30,000 years, the constructor said. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have documented every human achievement and failure. And I have reached a conclusion that I will share only with you. Humanity is not ready for the responsibilities you are about to assume. You will make mistakes. You will misuse technology. You will struggle with the ethical implications of what you are learning. You will fail, repeatedly and painfully. That is a hell of a pep talk, David muttered. But, the constructor continued, you will also keep trying. That is humanity's greatest strength, not wisdom, not caution, but persistence in the face of failure. You fall down, you get up. You make mistakes, you learn. You fail, you try again. That quality may save both your species. And the Verethi? Thomas asked. What is our greatest strength? Memory, the constructor replied. You preserve, you honor the past, you maintain traditions that give meaning and continuity. Separately, both species have weaknesses. Together, you might achieve balance. Humanity's drive tempered by Verethi wisdom. Verethi tradition energized by human innovation. It will not be easy. But it might be beautiful. The constructor's form began to fade. I leave you with this final thought. The universe is vast and often hostile. Species that face it alone rarely survive. But species that find partners, who build networks of cooperation and mutual support, those are the ones that thrive. You have found each other across 30,000 years. Do not waste this opportunity. And with that, the constructor deactivated, its consciousness dispersing into the ship's archives. Its purpose was fulfilled. The rest was up to humans and Verethi to figure out together. 50 years later, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the ESS Pathfinder, Earth's first faster-than-light vessel designed and built by human engineers, with Verethi guidance but not Verethi technology. All systems green, reported her first officer, a Verethi named Commander Peter Blake. We are ready for the first test of the human-designed FTL drive. In the observation gallery, honored guests watched history unfold. Among them were David Morgan and Thomas, both retired now but present for this moment. Emma Brooks, now Admiral Brooks, stood beside them. Hard to believe it has been 50 years, David said quietly. Hard to believe we made it here at all, Thomas replied. So many times we could have failed. But we did not, Emma added. We chose the hard path. We chose partnership. On the bridge, Captain Chen activated ship-wide communications. This is Captain Chen to all crew. What we do today, we do together, human and Verethi, working as one. Our Verethi friends could have simply given us FTL technology 50 years ago. Instead, they taught us the principles and let us figure out the engineering. It took longer, but we learned. We earned this. She looked at her first officer. Commander Blake, engage FTL drive. Engaging FTL drive, Peter confirmed. May this journey be the first of many. The Pathfinder's engines flared with power, not borrowed Verethi technology, but human engineering built on principles learned through decades of collaboration. The ship accelerated smoothly past the speed of light, proving that humanity had finally, truly, become a spacefaring civilization. In the observation gallery, David Morgan felt tears on his face. Thomas placed a hand on his shoulder. We did it, David whispered. Not just the ship. Everything. The partnership, the exchange programs, the joint colonies. We actually did it. You did it, Thomas corrected. You and Emma and everyone who chose trust over fear 50 years ago. You made this possible. We made it possible, David corrected in turn. Humans and Verethi together. Just like it should be. On Earth, in schools across the planet, human and Verethi children learned together. Some would grow up to join mixed-species crews exploring the galaxy. Others would become doctors, using techniques developed through collaborative research. Still others would become artists, creating works that blended human and Verethi aesthetics into something entirely new. It was not perfect. There were still tensions, still misunderstandings, still people on both sides who resented the partnership. But the overwhelming majority had chosen to move forward together. On the Wandering Star, still in service after 50 years as a joint training vessel and diplomatic platform, Guardian watched it all with satisfaction. The AI had witnessed 30,000 years of human history and 50 years of human-Verethi partnership. Was it worth the wait, Guardian? A young human cadet asked during a training exercise. Yes, Guardian replied. I watched humanity evolve from cave paintings to starships. I observed as you struggled with the same questions that plague all sentient species. Are we alone? Do we matter? Can we overcome our worst instincts? Now you have answers. You are not alone. You do matter. And yes, with effort and partnership, you can overcome your worst instincts and embrace your best. In Geneva, where the first treaty had been signed, a monument stood commemorating the partnership. It showed a human and a Verethi, hands joined, looking toward the stars. Beneath it, an inscription in both languages. We came to reclaim what was lost. We found something better, partners for the journey ahead. David Morgan, in his retirement speech 50 years after first contact, had said it best. The Verethi did not come here to test us, though they learned about us. They did not come to judge us, though they evaluated us. They came because they needed help, and they were brave enough to ask. We had the chance to refuse, to hoard our world and our development. Instead, we chose to share. That choice, that fundamental decision to open our arms rather than close our doors, defined who we would become as a species. And so humanity and the Verethi moved forward into the galaxy, not as patron and client, not as master and student, but as partners, each bringing their strengths, supporting each other through weaknesses, building something that neither species could have created alone. Guardian, watching from the ancient vessel as human and Verethi crews worked side by side, updated its archives one final time. Final conclusion: humanity is ready. Not perfect, not finished growing, but ready to take their place in the wider galaxy. The experiment begun 30,000 years ago is complete. The partnership begun 50 years ago is just beginning. The future is unknown, but for the first time in both species' histories, neither faces it alone. And that makes all the difference.